She dropped her wine when she saw me. Not because she was drunk. Not because she was surprised. Because she thought I was still in Norway. I watched the stemless glass roll across the marble like a guilty secret escaping into the crowd. She didn't move. Her eyes were locked on mine, even as the man beside her, tan, cufflinks, confident, wrapped an arm around her waist like she was already his. She didn't push him away. She didn't say my name. She just blinked. Once. Twice. And then the tears came. She tried to hide it, turned toward the exit, heels scraping violently against the floor, but I'd already seen everything I needed. The past 3 years rushed into me all at once like a dam breaking. The late-night silences. The ignored calls. The awkward pauses when I asked who she was texting. The fake apologies for missed flights. I used to explain it all away. She's just overwhelmed. It's just the distance. We're fine. I believe we were fine. Until I saw her wearing that necklace I never bought her. And the worst part? She didn't know I was even attending the event, because I wasn't supposed to. My name wasn't on the list. I was the guy running AV in the back, setting up the projector. Just the tech guy behind the curtain. And my wife was on stage, being honored as the keynote speaker's life partner for her support during his fintech startup journey. 3 years of silence. And here she was, clapping for someone else's success like it was hers. I stood in the shadows, heart racing, mind trying to scream, but mouth locked shut. Because if I walked up there and said who I was, I wouldn't just be crashing a corporate gala. I'd be destroying an entirely different life. I didn't move. I couldn't. From behind the control booth, tucked between a speaker case and an ice sculpture shaped like a phoenix, the company's new branding or something laughably symbolic, I stood frozen. My fingers were still resting on the laptop trackpad, hovering over a slide titled Resilience Through Partnership. Her face was still projected across the massive LED screen behind the stage. Smiling. Radiant. That same crooked smile I fell in love with on a bench outside a college art building 12 years ago. But it wasn't my Lena anymore. It was someone else's version of her. Or maybe it had always been. The man at the podium, the same smug guy who had his hand on her waist earlier, was now giving a speech. Confident. Polished. He said things like grind set without irony. Every few sentences, he gestured toward her like she was the oxygen he breathed during his rise from garage coder to Series C CEO. The audience ate it up. Executives nodded. Wives whispered admiration. Cameras clicked. They were the power couple of the hour. And I stood there, invisible, watching my wife of 8 years pretend to be someone else's muse. But what hit hardest wasn't the lies. It wasn't even the fact that she had clearly been living a double life. What shattered me was how good she was at it. Her posture was perfect. Her laugh on cue. When he told the story about late nights building the prototype while she brought coffee in her slippers, she tilted her head and gave a look of loving support. The same look she used to give me during our ramen-fueled startup days. Word for word, it was our story. Our real life. Just recast. She didn't just move on. She rehearsed it. I snapped a photo. Not because I wanted evidence, but because some pathetic part of me wanted to prove to myself later that it had really happened. That I hadn't dreamt it in one of my long, sleepless airport layovers. I slipped out through the catering hallway before the Q&A started. I couldn't breathe. I needed air, or answers, or both. I found myself sitting on a crate behind the hotel kitchen, next to a guy in a hairnet smoking a vape and scrolling TikTok. He looked at me once, nodded like he could smell the heartbreak, then went back to watching a video about cats and sweaters. I sat there for 20 minutes, maybe more. I don't remember. I kept refreshing her Instagram. Nothing recent. Just the same carefully curated mosaic of nature shots, coffee cups, and artsy books opened to profound quotes. The last picture of us together was 2 years old. A blurred shot in front of a lighthouse. I remember that day. She'd been cold and distant, but she smiled for the camera. And now I finally knew why. I was just a placeholder. A warm-up act. Something to survive until her real stage came calling. But here's the part one can't stop thinking about. She saw me. She saw me. She looked me dead in the eye before she ran. So why hasn't she reached out? No text. No call. Nothing. It's like I died in that room, and she decided not to attend the funeral. But I'm not done. Not yet. Because later that night, after the gala, someone slid a note under my hotel door. One line. Handwritten. No name. You don't know the half of it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, staring at the single sentence scribbled on the torn piece of stationery. You don't know the half of it. It wasn't signed. No explanation. Just black ink and a deliberate hand. The kind of handwriting that looked more corporate than emotional. Someone wanted me to know something. Or maybe they wanted to mess with me. Either way, the seed had been planted, and my mind wouldn't let go. At around 2:40 a.m., I finally stood up, turned on the desk lamp, and looked at the note again under the light. I flipped it over. Blank. No watermark. Just hotel paper. I scanned the hallway through the peephole, empty. But something in my gut told me I wasn't alone in this anymore. Someone else had been watching. Maybe even during the gala. Maybe the entire time. I didn't have the courage to text Lena. Not yet. I tried to draft something. We need to talk. Why were you there? Is he the reason you stopped loving me? But none of them felt right. They all made me sound like some sad, abandoned husband desperate for scraps of closure. Which, if I'm honest, I was. But I didn't want her to know that. I finally dozed off sometime before sunrise, only to be jolted awake 2 hours later by a knock at the door. Not a hard knock. Just 2 soft taps. For a second, I thought I dreamed it. But when I got up and opened the door, something slid into view on the floor. A flash drive. No note this time. Just a cheap, black USB stick. No markings. No label. I looked down both ends of the hallway. Nothing. No footsteps. No sound. Just the dull hum of a vending machine down the corridor. I didn't hesitate. I shut the door, popped the drive into my laptop, and held my breath. Inside were 6 files. All video clips. The first one opened to grainy, low-light footage, clearly from a phone, shot discreetly. It showed Lena, in a cafe, sitting with the same man from the gala. But they weren't flirting. They weren't even speaking much. He was leaned in close, whispering, and she was nodding slowly. Her eyes were sunken, scared almost. She kept glancing over her shoulder like she expected someone to burst through the window. I paused it, stunned. That wasn't the confident woman I saw the night before. That was someone hiding something, or being controlled. The second video was worse. It was a short clip, maybe 15 seconds. It showed Lena handing the man an envelope. He opened it quickly, thumbed through the contents. Looked like cash, then shoved it into his coat. She tried to take his hand, but he pulled away. His face turned cold. He said something I couldn't hear, then stood and walked out, leaving her sitting there, shaking. My heart dropped. What the hell was I watching? I played the third video. This one showed Lena entering a building I recognized, an office complex downtown. I'd been there before. It was a law firm. The timestamp was recent. Just 4 days ago. She looked tired, pale, like she hadn't slept. She clutched a folder to her chest and hesitated before pushing through the glass door. I didn't even open the remaining 3 files. Not yet. I needed air. I left the hotel and walked 3 blocks aimlessly, the cold air slicing through my jacket. I replayed everything in my head. The gala, the look on her face, the mystery note, the videos. None of it made sense. And yet, it explained everything. The distance, the silence, the way she seemed to be living someone else's life. But the most haunting question of all wasn't whether she was cheating. It was this: was she trying to escape something? Or someone? Because if she was, then I hadn't just lost my wife. I might be the only one who can still save her. I kept staring at the note like it was a riddle I'd already failed to solve. You don't know the half of it. 6 words, no context, and yet they cracked open a level of dread in me I didn't know existed. I sat at the edge of the bed in that cold, over-air-conditioned hotel room, the silence screaming louder than anything I'd heard at the gala. The skyline outside was still lit, even at 2 a.m., and somewhere out there, my wife, ex-wife, fake wife, double-life wife, I didn't even know what to call her anymore, was probably asleep beside another man. Or maybe she was awake, shaking like she did when she saw me, trying to piece together what I knew. Or what she thought I knew. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. My body was still in shock. My hands were trembling, and I kept replaying that moment when she dropped her glass and ran like I'd just risen from the grave. I wanted to believe it was guilt, that she saw me and remembered what she left behind. But now, after that note, I didn't know if she was scared of me or scared for me. Around 7 a.m., I gave up trying to rest and dragged myself to the hotel room door to grab the complimentary breakfast that always gets cold before you even touch it. But there was something else on the floor. At first I thought it was a misplaced room service receipt, But when I bent down to pick it up, I realized it wasn't paper. It was a USB drive. Black. No label. No branding. The kind you'd buy in a 10-pack off Amazon. My stomach dropped. I shut the door, inserted the drive into my laptop without thinking twice. Yeah, I know, dumb move. I work in tech. I should know better. But logic doesn't stand a chance against panic. The drive contained 6 video files. Just 6. No text files, no folder names. All clips. All time-stamped over the past month. I opened the first one and immediately knew it was filmed without permission. Shaky cam, awkward angle. I saw Lena sitting in a booth at what looked like a diner. She was across from the same man from the gala, the one with the too-perfect suit and over-rehearsed charm. They weren't talking. Not at first. She looked uncomfortable. Her fingers kept moving, fidgeting with the sugar packets, tapping on the table. Eventually he leaned in, whispered something I couldn't hear. Her face changed. It went blank. Then tense. She nodded. Slowly. And that was it. The clip ended before she even spoke. The second video? Worse. It was a back alley or a parking structure, somewhere shadowy. Lena was standing with a folder in her hand, flipping through what looked like printed documents. The same man took them from her. No eye contact. No emotion. But then she reached for his hand. Just instinct maybe, or desperation, and he yanked it back. He stepped toward her and said something low, something sharp. Then he walked off, leaving her alone in the dark. She stayed there for a minute after he disappeared, just breathing, shaking. The third video was taken from farther away, like surveillance footage, or someone zooming in from a distance. Lena entered a building I recognized instantly. It was the regional office of Wexler & Crowe, a boutique legal firm that specializes in IP law, whistleblower defense, and corporate non-disclosure arbitration. I only knew this because I'd once helped do the compliance software for their international branch back in 2019. What the hell was Lena doing there? I didn't even open the last 3 clips. I just sat there, staring at the screen, sweat pooling at the back of my neck. This wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just betrayal. She was involved in something. Something bigger. Something that required folders, dark meetings, legal visits, and surveillance. And somehow, someone thought I needed to see it. That thought stuck with me. Whoever left me the note and flash drive, they weren't warning me about Lena. They were warning me about what she was caught in. And then something even stranger happened. As I sat there, reeling, trying to process it all, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. Area code 646. New York. I let it go to voicemail. 5 seconds later, it buzzed again. Same number. Again, I didn't answer. I had a bad feeling deep in my gut. When it buzzed the third time, I caved and picked up, my voice dry, cautious. But no one spoke. I listened. Faint breathing. Then a click. The line went dead. And that's when I realized I'd made a mistake by coming here. I didn't just crash a gala. I walked straight into something I didn't understand. And whoever's watching, they know I'm involved now. I didn't open the last 3 videos right away. I paced the room first, biting the edge of my thumb like I used to do when I was 12 and too afraid to look at my report card. The air in that hotel suite had grown stale, claustrophobic, like the walls were pressing in on me 1 inch at a time. The flash drive sat on the desk like a lit fuse, and part of me wanted to pull it out and toss it down the trash chute, pretend I'd never seen any of it. But that part of me was a coward, and cowards don't get answers. They just drown in questions. So I clicked the 4th file. At first, I thought it was a mistake. The footage was shaky, angled too low, and the lighting was poor. It looked like someone had left their phone camera recording by accident. But then I saw Lena. She was sitting on a park bench, hoodie pulled up, sunglasses on, holding what looked like a paper coffee cup with both hands like it was the only thing anchoring her to the earth. She wasn't alone. A man sat beside her. But this time, it wasn't the finance guy from the gala. This was someone older, thinner, with a deep scar across the left side of his neck. His face was familiar, but I couldn't place it immediately. He wasn't touching her. He wasn't smiling. He was handing her something. A thick, worn envelope wrapped in rubber bands. The kind you only see in bad crime documentaries or cash drop scenes in movies. She didn't look scared this time. She looked hollow, like she was just going through the motions. Then the man stood up, muttered something, and walked out of frame. The camera lingered on Lena for a few more seconds. She didn't move. She just sat there, holding the envelope, before finally stuffing it under her coat and walking in the opposite direction. But something about the man kept nagging at me. So I paused the video and zoomed in. His face was blurred slightly, but I knew that scar, that posture, that specific limp in his left leg. And then it hit me like a brick to the chest. He used to work with me. Elijah Brinks, a back-end engineer from my old company. Quiet, brilliant, paranoid as hell. He got let go 3 years ago after some HR scandal no one would talk about. I hadn't thought about him in ages, not since the week he left and scrubbed his entire digital footprint. Just disappeared, gone without a trace. And now here he was, meeting my wife in secret with envelopes full of God knows what. What the hell was going on? I opened the 5th video. This one was short, maybe 10 seconds. It was a silent security cam angle, probably taken from inside an office. Lena again, this time in a long coat, walking briskly down a hallway, then unlocking a door and stepping inside. She was carrying a laptop and a manila envelope. I recognized the door. It belonged to Echelon Analytics, a private intelligence firm that specializes in digital forensics and corporate sabotage cases. Why was she going there? Was she investigating someone? Was she trying to disappear? Or was she trying to destroy something? My head was spinning now. My heart wouldn't slow down. I hadn't eaten. I couldn't even feel my legs. But I clicked on the 6th and final video anyway. I had to. The screen opened to a dimly lit apartment. The camera was steady, like it was placed on a shelf or hidden in a vent. It faced a table. A man walked into frame. I couldn't see his face, only his hands and the outline of his jaw. He sat down, placed a folder on the table, opened it, and began flipping through printed pages. Then he spoke. His voice was distorted, digitally filtered, but the words were clear. She's not the one lying to you. I froze. You think this is about her cheating? You think this is about a man? It's not. She's in deeper than you know. She tried to get out. That's why she left you. She thought distance would keep you safe. I leaned in, jaw slack. I didn't understand. None of this made sense. But it was real. Every second of it. The voice continued. If you want to know the truth, don't go to her. Don't go to the company. Come to where it all started. Friday, 9 p.m., Storage Unit 114, Northside Industrial Park. And then the screen cut to black. I stared at the laptop like it had just cursed me. Storage Unit 114, Northside Industrial Park? That was nearly 5 hours from here. A place I hadn't been in a decade. A place Lena never knew existed. Or at least, I thought she didn't. And just as I began to close the laptop, a sudden cold rush hit me. Something else in the 6th video, a reflection, on the table surface, just before the video ended. It was faint, but unmistakable. My face. Watching. In real time. Whoever made that video, they were in the room when I pressed play. By the time I got to the industrial park, the sky was already bruised with the early signs of evening. That ugly shade between purple and black, like a bruise just before it blooms. My GPS kept recalculating every 10 seconds because apparently Northside Industrial wasn't even properly mapped anymore. The place looked like it had been abandoned and then brought back to life just enough to keep its secrets hidden behind chain-link fences and motion-triggered floodlights. Unit 114 wasn't hard to find. It was tucked at the far end, past rows of other corrugated metal doors that looked like they hadn't been opened in years. But this one was different. There were fresh tire tracks in front of it. Someone had been here recently. Someone had probably just left. And the strangest part, there was a soft yellow light glowing underneath the door. A faint strip of warmth leaking out onto the cracked pavement like an invitation or a warning. I hesitated. Something in my gut begged me to turn around. Everything about this screamed no. The silence, the flickering motion light behind me, the camera I could feel pointed at my back. I wasn't some action movie hero. I was a guy who once got a panic attack trying to return a printer at Best Buy. But Lena's face in those videos haunted me, and the sound of that distorted voice telling me I didn't know the half of it. It wouldn't stop playing in my head. So I reached for the padlock, and to my surprise, it was already unlatched, just hanging there, as if they'd left it that way for me. I lifted the rolling door slowly, and the squeal of metal echoed through the entire compound. If someone was nearby, they definitely heard me. Inside, the unit was nothing like I expected. No piles of junk, no dusty boxes, just a single folding table, a corkboard wall covered in printed photos and maps, and a laptop set up in the middle, lid closed, next to a white envelope with my name written on it. In Lena's handwriting. I walked inside, letting the door slam shut behind me. The sound made me flinch. I stood there, breathing in the sharp, metallic air. The laptop had no cords attached. It was just sitting there, humming quietly like it had been waiting. I didn't touch it yet. I reached for the envelope first. Inside was a note. Real ink, real paper. No digital trails. Daryl, if you're reading this, then you know things I hoped you never would. I wanted to protect you from it, not because you're weak, but because you're good. And good people don't survive this kind of mess. Not intact. I didn't cheat on you. Not in the way you think. I just became someone you couldn't recognize, and it was easier to let you believe the worst than to drag you down with me. Elijah tried to warn me. He said they'd come after you too if I didn't play my role. I thought distance would be enough to keep you safe. I was wrong. There was more. For pages, in fact. But I had to stop reading because my hands were shaking too badly. I dropped into the plastic chair and finally opened the laptop. It powered on instantly. No password. Just a folder on the desktop labeled Need to Know. Inside were scanned documents, screenshots of emails, photos of boardroom meetings, financial statements, and one word that kept coming up again and again, Stratasolve. It took me a minute to recognize it. Stratasolve was the internal AI security platform my former company had been quietly testing before the merger. It was supposed to be shelved, deemed too unstable, too invasive, too legally risky. And yet here it was, alive, funded, being sold under a different name to foreign buyers. Lena had uncovered everything. Names, transfers, NDAs, backroom deals, and somehow she'd gotten herself in deep enough that they needed her silence or her cooperation. That's why she was with that man at the gala. That wasn't a lover. That was a handler. She wasn't running from me. She was protecting me. I sat back, stunned. Everything I thought I knew about the past 3 years had just been flipped inside out. The missed calls, the sudden coldness, the distance. It wasn't emotional abandonment. It was strategic, calculated. She didn't ghost me. She quarantined me. And just as I started copying the folder onto my drive, the laptop froze. The screen went black. Then a new window opened, a live feed from a nearby camera. Grainy, static, but unmistakable. It showed a car, my rental, and a man approaching it, holding something metallic in his hand. Then the feed cut. I didn't even have time to think. The camera feed cut to black so suddenly that I was still blinking at the screen when the sound finally reached my ears, a soft metallic clink just outside the unit. My heart was already sprinting ahead of me. I shoved the envelope into my jacket, yanked the flash drive out of the laptop, and reached for the metal rod propped against the wall. It wasn't much, probably used to hold the door open, but it was the only thing resembling a weapon in that sterile, terrifyingly quiet room. I backed into the darkest corner, trying to calm my breathing. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run, but there was nowhere to run to. If I opened the door, I'd be exposing myself. If I stayed, I'd be trapped. Then it happened. The unmistakable roll of the door mechanism. Slow. Controlled. Whoever was on the other side wasn't rushing. They were confident. That terrified me more than anything. When the door finally opened just wide enough to let the light in, I stayed completely still, my grip white-knuckled on the rod. A silhouette appeared. Not the man from the videos, not the handler from the gala. This one was taller, bulkier, wearing some kind of maintenance uniform. He had something in his hand, a black case about the size of a large book. He stepped inside without speaking, his eyes scanning the room like he already knew what to expect. Like he'd been here before. I waited until he passed the laptop. Then I moved. I came at him fast and clumsy, all adrenaline and desperation. I swung the rod hard, catching him on the shoulder. He grunted but didn't fall. Instead, he grabbed me by the jacket, shoved me backward, and I hit the wall with enough force to knock the breath out of my lungs. The rod clattered across the floor. My head was ringing. He reached for something in his jacket, and I thought that was it. That's how I'd die. In a rented storage unit in the middle of nowhere, because I looked too far into a life that wasn't mine anymore. But instead of pulling a weapon, he pulled out a badge. Real. Government issued. Not a movie prop. He didn't flash it like a cop in a procedural drama. He held it low, casually, like he wasn't trying to scare me. Just control the scene. His voice was steady, measured. You're not supposed to be here, Mr. Mathers. I couldn't speak. My throat was dry. My lungs still hadn't fully recovered. He looked down at the laptop, now frozen, dark screen and all. Then back at me. You accessed material that doesn't belong to you. I found my voice, barely. It was addressed to me. That doesn't mean it was yours. My brain was on fire. Who was he? Was he NSA? Internal affairs? Corporate cleanup? He had the tone of someone who knew far more than he was allowed to say, and the posture of someone who'd broken into dozens of places like this before. You know what Stratosolve is, I said, before I could stop myself. You're part of it, aren't you? He didn't answer. Instead, he moved past me, toward the corkboard. He studied it in silence. Then, calmly, he began removing the photos, one by one, and feeding them into a small handheld shredder he pulled from his black case. That's when I realized I was witnessing a cover-up in real time. I don't care about your affair, he said finally. I don't care about your feelings. This isn't about your marriage, Mr. Mathers. It never was. You are an access point. That's all. Access to what? I demanded. He paused, stared at me like I was a child asking why fire was hot. To her. To what she stole. To who she talked to. You were clean. Useless. Until she dragged you back in. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to scream that I didn't ask for any of this. That I'd been loyal. That I'd suffered. But he was already zipping up the case, the shredded remnants of my life locked away inside. He turned to leave, but before stepping out, he gave me one final look. Not angry, not threatening. Just exhausted. Walk away. You've seen enough. Then he was gone. No threats. No arrests. No warning shot. Just a silent expectation that I'd shut up and disappear. But here's the thing. He was wrong. I hadn't seen enough. Because Lena's note, the part one hadn't read in the panic, ended with a question. A single line at the bottom of the last page, scrawled in shaky handwriting. Daryl, did you tell anyone about Norway? Norway. The word hit me like ice down the spine. Because that was the one secret I never told her. The flight to Oslo was long, cold, and quiet. I didn't sleep. I didn't read. I didn't even pretend to eat. I just sat there, staring out the window as clouds turned into nothing and the nothing turned into snow. There's something strange about chasing a ghost across continents. Something exhausting, sure, but also strangely clarifying. When you're 35,000 feet above every lie, every file, every surveillance camera, and every sealed envelope, you realize how little any of it means if you can't look the one person you love in the eye and know you still exist to them. That was the only thing I wanted. Not revenge, not justice, just confirmation that I wasn't crazy to love her. When I landed, there were no armed guards. No tail. No traps. Just an airport too quiet for how much weight I carried with me. Lena's note had mentioned a name, Hogfjell Farm, a remote village 2 hours north of the capital. A place I'd only heard once, years ago, when she told me about her grandmother's hometown. I never asked about it again. At the time, it felt irrelevant. Now it was everything. I rented a car, followed the narrow roads deep into the frozen wilderness. The farther I drove, the more it felt like reality was thinning. Cell service disappeared. My GPS glitched. I passed cabins covered in frost, trees bent like they were praying. And finally, just as the sun began to collapse into the horizon, I saw it. The cabin. Small. Old. But warm light flickered inside. I parked, heart ready to beat out of my chest, and approached the door. I knocked once. Then again. No answer. But it opened. And there she was. Lena. Not in disguise. Not in fear. Not crying or apologizing or rehearsing her lines. Just her. In a thick sweater, her hair tied up, eyes tired but alive. She looked older. Different. But real in a way I hadn't seen in years. She didn't speak. She just stepped aside and let me in. The cabin smelled like cedar and fresh bread. A fire crackled in the corner. And on the table was a cup of coffee. She poured another. We sat. We drank. We stared. And finally, she said the words I'd been holding my breath for since the gala. I thought you were better off thinking I was a traitor than watching me disappear into something you couldn't stop. I didn't interrupt. But they didn't win, Daryl. Not completely. Elijah got out. I helped him. And now they're covering it up, scrubbing everything, pretending it never happened. But the truth, what they did, what they built, it's too big to bury. Eventually, it will surface. But I won't be around to see it. That's when she reached into a drawer and handed me a small wooden box. Inside was a hard drive, encrypted, air-gapped, and offline. I recognized it instantly. She had it with her the last time we were truly happy. Our honeymoon. You keep it. If they ever come for you, you give it to someone who can't be bought. I nodded, throat closing. We didn't talk much after that. We didn't need to. Sometimes the silence says more than any confession. She showed me the guest room. I slept for 12 hours. No nightmares. Just snow falling quietly on the roof. I stayed 3 days. We didn't plan what was next. No declarations. No forced reconciliation. Just presence. Just healing. On the last morning, I stood at the edge of the lake behind the cabin while she painted, just like she used to. The same strokes. The same patience. But now she painted for herself, not for show. Before I left, I asked her if she still loved me. She looked up, smiled the softest smile, and said, I never stopped. I just paused the story so you could live through it. And somehow that was enough. I don't know what comes next. I don't know if I'll see her again. But I carry the drive. I carry her truth. And I carry the knowledge that sometimes love survives even when the world doesn't want it to. And sometimes, just sometimes, the ending isn't about what broke. It's about what still holds.